delicate but present, and somehow, despite the outside heat, the flavor is calm, unbothered. This isn't just a refreshment, it's a declaration, a little protest against the tyranny of the sun. The man chuckles as you nearly drop the cup in awe. First time. You nod. Historians still argue whether these types of chilled refreshment stands were widespread at roadside inns or limited to wealthier caravan routes. Some suspect that more rustic versions, ice mixed with tamarind or vinegar, were popular among long-haul traders, especially those transporting dried fruit, saffron, or silk. Others argue that cooling was an elite luxury that occasionally spilled into the public sphere. But here, in this dusty resting point between nowhere and somewhere else, you're eating snow laced with royal ingredients, and no one's chasing you away. A pair of children run past you barefoot, giggling. One stops, dips a fig in the snow, and hands it to the other. They vanish before you can blink. A woman with a basket of walnuts takes her portion quietly and sits beneath the vines, curling up a trellis. Even the pigeons seem to coo a little softer here. The vendor offers you a second helping, this time with sour cherry syrup and a splash of rose water. Good for the heart, he mutters. Whether that's medical advice or a poetic license, you're not sure. You drink it anyway.
Beneath the main building, there's a storage pit.
He invites you to look. It's deeper than you expect. Rough steps spiral down into coolness. At the bottom, carved shelves hold clay jars, woven baskets, and yes, snow, packed tight, covered in burlap, like a treasure hoarded from the mountains. You touch it, still cool, not icy anymore, but damp and soft, like winter in hibernation. Brought in last week, he explains, carried from the pass, 3 camels, 1 broken cart. Worth it. He shows you a small trick he learned from his grandfather. Take a flat stone, place it in the pit overnight, then serve desserts on it the next morning. They stay cold long enough to impress the Persians and confuse the Greeks. He laughs. You return to the courtyard just in time to see a musician setting up by the fountain. A reed flute, a clay drum, soft notes drifting like breeze through citrus trees. You sit under the awning, belly comfortably chilled, eyelids drooping, brain sloshed with syrup and quiet.
Someone sets down a bowl beside you. Not snow this time, something denser, creamy. You dip a finger and realize it's a kind of frozen yogurt. Thick, tangy, lightly sweetened, with flakes of crushed walnut on top. You're not sure where it came from or who brought it, but you eat it anyway. Of course you do. Because in this place, at this hour, with the heat politely waiting outside the walls, everything cold feels like a sacred gift. A traveler nearby tells a story between bites of frozen quince of a merchant who used to freeze fish in snow and serve it raw to guests, claiming it was the food of mountain gods. Another shares a family legend about an ancestor who could hear when ice was perfect a skill apparently passed down from a line of sorbet whisperers. You lean back and let the stories drift. They're tall tales, probably, but they feel real in this moment, because the truth is, everything cool in this landscape is a kind of magic. Not the flashy kind with wands or spells, the slow, stubborn, clever kind, the kind that begins with a snowflake caught in a basket and ends with a smile under a fig tree. As the music continues and the last spoonful of yogurt melts in your mouth, you realize this caravanserai is more than a rest stop. It's a freezer, a theater, a memory archive. And today, it was all yours. You leave the caravanserai at dusk, the horizon stained with burnt orange and violet. Behind you, the walls glow faintly, still releasing the sun's heat like a long sigh. But you feel light, almost airy, buoyed by a belly full of snow and sweetness. The road back into town winds gently past fields of barley and clusters of tamarisk trees. You pass quiet courtyards and shuttered shops, but your path isn't random. You're following a story. One last whisper from the scroll that archivist gave you earlier. It mentioned a woman, a merchant's daughter, who became famous in the city for her ice-cooling techniques. Not a noble, not a priestess, just someone with sharp eyes, good instincts, and an obsession with frozen fruit. Her home still stands, at least partially. Tucked in the back streets of the artisan district, half swallowed by vines and jasmine, it looks less like a historical monument and more like a tired neighbor. But you knock anyway. A young man answers. He's her great-great-grand-whatever, probably. You explain your curiosity. He shrugs. You want to see the courtyard? Yes, you do. He leads you through the house, low ceilings, wide thresholds, the faint scent of dried herbs clinging to the air. And then, there it is, the courtyard. It's not extravagant, not royal, just smart. The walls are high, the floor sunken slightly, and a narrow stream cuts through it, a mini canal, still flowing. At the far end, beneath a reed roof, sits an odd stone structure, a squat bowl built into the ground, lined with glazed tiles, and surrounded by what looks like a rainwater trap. That, the man says proudly, is her yak seng, a cold stone, part root cellar, part refrigerator, part roomer. It worked on simple principles. Water collected in the central basin, cooled overnight by the desert chill. If the temperature dropped low enough, a thin layer of ice would form. And if you were smart and lucky, you'd insulate it with straw or fabric, scoop it up at dawn and trap it in layers of clay. No need for a giant dome, no caravan of snow-laden donkeys, just a clever woman and her courtyard. Historians still argue whether these domestic cold pits were common or unique to this family's tradition. Some say they were widespread but rarely documented because, well, they were women's work. Others think this was a fluke of genius, a one-off success that survived in oral history because everyone loved her apricot ice. The man shows you the old records, household accounts scratched on palm bark. Entries like 3 figs for freezing and do not overfill the cooling bowl again, it cracks. One note, apparently from the woman herself, reads, I caught Farhad eating the morning ice. I chased him with the stirring paddle. You laugh out loud. Then he hands you a tray, slices of fig, soft and cold, pickled lemon, chilled rosewater jelly, everything kept underground or wrapped in cloth or soaked in kanat water. Simple stuff. But each bite is a small miracle, not because it's luxurious, but because it shouldn't be possible. You're in a desert, remember? Things aren't supposed to be cold here, and yet here you are chewing chilled fig under a twilight sky that's starting to reveal its stars. Your legs stretched out beside a canal built before your language even existed. A neighbor pops their head over the wall. He's showing you the jelly again? She laughs. Ask him about the frozen cucumber incident. Oh no, he groans. Not that story. But he tells it anyway. Apparently, one particularly hot summer, a guest from India claimed cucumbers were too plain. So the merchant's daughter, never one to tolerate culinary snobbery, froze slices overnight using her cold pit, dipped them in saffron vinegar, and served them on rose petals. The guest allegedly wept, or pretended to. The records are unclear. You lean back, dizzy from contentment. There's no palace here, no royal servants, just shadows, laughter, and old recipes passed from hand to hand like sacred whispers. You glance up at the stars. One of them twinkles oddly. A planet, maybe, or a celestial wink. And you wonder how many generations tasted cold like this and thought it magic, and how many modern people, surrounded by humming machines and humming lives, have forgotten the delight of waiting for it, because that's the secret, isn't it? Patience, planning, letting the night chill do the work, respecting the earth's rhythms enough to pause, prepare, and taste the result. You're handed one final treat, a frozen disk of honey and pomegranate juice, pressed into a flat clay mold. You bite it. It cracks between your teeth, sharp and sudden, then melts into syrup and memory. The man smiles. That recipe's only 300 years old, he jokes. Basically new. And somehow, that makes it even better. Because the cooling of desserts here in ancient Persia was never about luxury. It was about possibility, about answering the sun with stillness, the fire with frost, and reminding everyone that joy, like snow, is worth chasing, even if it melts. The night has fully settled now, cool and velvety, pressing gently against the walls of the city like a reassuring hand. Lanterns flicker on the rooftops. The distant sound of a reed flute drifts down a narrow alley. And you? You're headed toward the house of physicians. Not because you're ill, but because you're curious. Here, medicine and food often share a courtyard. The house itself is unmarked, save for a mosaic above the entrance. 2 doves perched on a bowl, surrounded by what appear to be herbs, and... Is that a snowflake? Yes. A perfect little geometric star tucked into the corner like a secret ingredient. Inside, you're met by an apprentice, barely old enough to grow a proper beard, but brimming with the kind of confidence that comes from memorizing 100 healing plants before puberty. He welcomes you in and leads you past clay jars, drying herbs, and bundles of rose petals hung upside down from the beams. Coolness, he explains, is not just about comfort, it's about balance. You nod. You've heard this before. The ancient idea of humoral theory, where health is maintained by balancing the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Yes, the names are unfortunate, but the idea? Surprisingly elegant. Too hot? Cool it down. Too dry? Moisturize, with food, with water, with rest. He shows you a cabinet full of syrups and pastes, sour cherry extract to lower fevers, yogurt mixed with cucumber to ease digestion, fig soaked in cold water to settle nerves. One, labeled only with a faded glyph of a snowflake, is described as ice balm for the restless mind. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. You can drink it, or just look at it. Chilled emotions, it seems, were just as valuable as chilled desserts.